In an attempt to defame me, my soon-to-be ex-wife asked me, in front of court clerk, "Do you still think you're an alien from outer space?" Everyone saw how crazy she was and sided with me in court. What is the greatest way someone has attempted to humiliate or harass you, which ended up backfiring? My dad used to be work in the maintenance department at a very expensive and very high-class boys-only high school. It was actually a pretty respectable job, requiring a plethora of trade qualifications and a working brain. He was pretty committed to the job and often pulled overtime on the weekends. But, because it was a rich school in a rich area, there was a lot of snobbery involved. Kids' parents were buttholes. The kids were practically uncontrollable. Dad handled it all by just being incredibly good at his job and never getting mad, just even. So, one Saturday morning he goes into the workshop on campus to build some new tables and desks. At 9 o'clock he gets in, makes coffee and gets set up, before turning on the extractor fans in the workshop that remove the sawdust. As a side note, you're legally allowed to operate machinery like this from 7 o'clock in the morning onwards, in terms of noise pollution restrictions. Cue a guy, most likely a parent of one of the boys at the school, storming over from his house in the properties behind the workshop, in his dressing gown, absolutely flips his crap, screaming at Dad to turn the machinery off. Dad just stands his ground, explains that he's allowed to be running it and waited until mid-morning out of courtesy. That's not good enough, and this guy starts making threats along the lines of, "They know me at the college. I know people. I can have you sacked. Who is your supervisor?" Dad says, "I can give you the maintenance supervisor's number," and hands the guy a business card. Guy pulls out his mobile and dials the number. He's staring Dad in the face, still pumped up and ready to start bagging him out to the supervisor. Dad's phone rings. He pulls it out, answers it and says, "Scotch Carb SNR, maintenance supervisor." The guy flipped his crap completely, threw the card back at Dad and stormed out. "You made me laugh so hard I woke up my cat. XD." My ex pulled similar stunts in our divorce and custody fight. She claimed in affidavits that I was suicidal, homicidal, violent, had anger management issues, abusing prescription and illegal drugs. Basically everything short of molesting our child, which my attorney expressed surprise at. As we walked into court on the first day, she said that if our child had been a female we'd be fighting such accusations. Her attorney also tried very hard to portray me as a stereotypical military vet with deep emotional problems. So my ex petitioned the court to have me undergo a psych eval. The judge looked at me and asked, "Mr. that Kazma stash, how do you feel about this?" I said that I had no problem with it, but it would probably be a good idea if the ex had one. 2. He found the idea delightful, and even allowed my ex to choose the doctor to administer it. So we go through the psych eval thing. This was a total of about 6 or 8 hours in the doc's office over the course of several days. The day before the divorce trial starts we get the results back. Mr. that Kazma Stash has mild symptoms of situational depression, which is no surprise as his wife has been conducting at least one, and as many as several affairs, blah blah blah. There is no indication of suicidal or homicidal tendencies, nor drug abuse, nor violence, nor antisocial behavior. He is basically a good guy going through a crappy divorce. Mrs. that Kazma Stash has a non-specific borderline personality disorder, a narcissistic personality disorder, and 3 of the 5 standardized tests used to evaluate her were invalidated because she lied on them. Here's the very cool part. When I went to settle the bill at the doc's office, his nurse pulled me aside and said, "We don't get emotionally involved with our clients, Mr. that Kazma Stash, but everyone in this office is pulling for you." Apparently the ex had stormed in and lit the entire staff up in spectacular fashion over the diagnoses. My attorney's secretary also let me know that my ex's attorney's secretaries, seems that these folks talk outside of class a lot, were very hopeful that my ex would get ramrodded by the court. In the end, I was granted custody of my son, and the judge included some very sharp language about my ex's testimony and integrity that I am told will be my primary weapon should she ever choose to contest any aspect of either the divorce or custody rulings. My favorite quote: her answers were evasive, disingenuous and, at times, breathtakingly unbelievable. "Thanks, Your Honor. TL. DR. X went from a tropical storm to a category 5 hurricane in the courtroom. I was like the mighty willow who bent but did not break." I was like the mighty willow who bent but did not break. Upvote just for that. A guy I know was going through some nasty divorce proceedings with his bitchy, narcissistic, vain soon-to-be ex-wife. I've met the woman once. She reminds me of Lucille Bluth on Arrested Development. She accused him of beating her, convinced their daughter to back up her story, got one of her cop relatives to arrest him. He, however, had an airtight defense. His EZ Pass records showed that at the time she claimed he hit her, he was in another state. I have an ex that, after almost 10 years, is apparently still going around to people I know telling them I beat her, and just wish he would finally admit and come clean to everyone about beating her. Even crazier, I've talked to her myself a handful of times over the last 4 years, and she actively denies telling people that I beat her, and claims that it's one big misunderstanding. I was attending training for a deployment. One of the trainers was teaching something wrong and I corrected him. He tried to make a big scene and accused me of disrespecting a superior and co. Then I pointed out that I outranked him. Ex-girlfriend comes up to me at a group of people I'm chatting with outside of class, sees I'm talking to an attractive girl, and says you don't want to get to know Editor Ray. He is a stupid Jew. Good thing this was right in front of the local news folks asking the Chabad, Jewish student group, about the upcoming Jewish holy days, and the attractive girl I was talking to was recording us on camera. Had a guy steal a parking spot from me outside of my old job a while back. I was in a beta pickup, he in a rather nice BMW. I did the WTF face and he walked over and said my car is nice and should be seen up by the front of the building. Go park your pose at the other end of the lot. That guy? Yeah, he was my afternoon interview for a sales job. My psycho ex-wife denied me visitation with my mentally disabled 27-year-old daughter for almost a year. In court, she pointed out that I am an alcoholic. In her own lawyer's notes provided to the court, it showed that I was in AA for 28 years and haven't had a drink since Reagan was president. The judge pointed out that I was a sober, senior manager with 2 master degrees who had never been arrested and was fighting to see my mentally retarded daughter. The judge asked if there was any reason why I shouldn't get to see her. When my ex opened her mouth, the judge actually said, "Sit down and shut the frick up." It was a rhetorical question. I am not granting visitation. I am granting joint guardianship. When the ex went to speak again, the judge said, "How would you like me to make it sole guardianship? And if you aren't sure, it wouldn't be in your favor." I never even had to say a word. Just got done a 9-day visit with my daughter whom I see every other weekend, and it only cost me $28,000. Still, I fought the good fight and won. I imagine if she opened her mouth again he would have sentenced her to death. In 7th grade, this would have been more than 20 years ago, before the internet, I went out with this girl Deanna for a little while. I broke up with her because I didn't like spending time with her and we only went out because of one dance or something. We never even went past kissing, and even that was just a kind of boring French kiss. Anyway, she got really upset and started a scene. It was right in the middle of lunch in the cafeteria and she yelled, "Whatever, you're such a loser and your penis is way too big anyway." Her miscalculations. 1. She implied that she'd seen my penis. We were 13. She got branded a school S. 2. She implied that I had a big penis. This rumor stuck with me all through high school. I even changed carefully during gym classes to keep from dispelling the rumor. 3. A few girls at parties expressed interest in seeing it, due to the rumors. I obliged occasionally, and in private. For the record, I'm pretty sure my penis was average size in high school. Now, of course, it has its own gravity and weather systems, and lesser penises orbit it, affecting the penile tides. So really, she's, in a way, the best friend you've ever had. Had a guy say to me after we were done playing basketball and my team won, "Oh yeah, how'd you like your foot up my butt?" Crap. Many lols were had afterwards on his account. I'm always late to these, but here goes. I had been in college for a year and a half, and decided to transfer to a different school, a little closer to home. A lot of my friends from high school went to the school I transferred to, so when I first got there, I spent a lot of time hanging out with them. They lived on the other side of campus, and I was there almost every night. For some reason, One of the girls we hung out with, who lived in their dorm, didn't like me. I'm still not sure why. I got along pretty well with everyone else. A few weeks later, unknown to me, she started sort of dating one of my roommates, who she had met through someone else. She did not know he was my roommate at the time. At one point, we had all been hanging out together in her dorm, with some of my friends. As he told me, after I left, she started complaining about what in butthole I was, and saying some pretty terrible things about me. He told me he yelled at her something to the effect of "Don't ever talk about my roommate like that. He's an awesome guy," and apparently he never saw her again after that. Good riddance. She was a B. TL. DR. Girl talks crap about me to guy she was dating and didn't know was my roommate. He stops dating her. That's a dang good roommate. You better treasure him. Not me, but my mom. Before I was born, she worked at a US government office. There were many parties where military officers and the admins, secretaries, would attend. At one of these parties, one dude, who was big on sexually harassing women on a normal day, had a few too many to drink. He came up to my mom and pinched her butt and said, "I'd really love to get in your pants." Humiliated, she kept her cool, but raised her voice and responded so the whole office could hear. "Why? Did you crap yours?" Silence. The dude's butthole puckered up and he turned red in the face, and didn't harass anyone for a long time after that. Meanwhile, across the room was her soon-to-be husband, my father, who heard the exchange, impressed. Not long after this exchange, he asked my mom if she'd like to celebrate his divorce from his ex-wife and go on their first date. 3 months later they were married, and still are to this day. With a pickup line like that, "Your dad must be the smoothest operator ever." Or maybe it just really helps to be a man in uniform. This girl I sat by in art class in the 6th grade was one of those big, loud bullies. The kind that can talk crap all day, but acts confused and cries when anyone is mean to her. Anyways, she was making fun of my new glasses one day and said really loud, so the whole class could hear her, "Wow, they're really big." So I looked up and politely, and loudly, said, "Well, so are you," but I thought it would have been rude to say anything. That shut her up. That reminds me of a girl in my 7th grade PE class who would bully me with her 2 other friends. I told the fat bee she should be the goalie for soccer because it'd be physically impossible for a ball to get past her and into the goal. She snitched on me to the teacher, and the teacher thought I was complimenting her skills as a goalie. When I was in 8th grade, there was this kid that would always bully me. He stole crap from my locker, had his buddies hold me down and drew stuff on me, and would insult me constantly. One day, he decided that it would be absolutely hilarious to pants me in front of the entire school during lunch. You see, saggy pants were a fad at my school in 8th grade, and almost nobody wore their pants at their waist where it was supposed to be. Almost nobody, except me. I, on the other hand, knew what the frick a belt was. When that punk butt grabbed a handful of my Levi's in an attempt to yank them down, he ended up getting caught red-handed molesting another dude in front of the entire school. It made that entire crappy school year worth it. I started at a small NYC ad agency last summer. My first day I was met with a disastrous ad to fix. Upon arrival, I was met with Jack, not his real name but he was a Jack of do-it'll-do. Jack wanted to know, 1 hour after I started, when he could see something on this ad. I told him I would welcome his feedback, but wasn't close to done, as I had just started there. He tore me and butt for my attitude and proceeded to tell me that I was off on the wrong foot because he ran this account. Right in the middle is his bully rant. A group had assembled. One of the junior account people tried to get his attention, which only deepened his fury at my imagined insolence. Finally, the owner came out of her office. Jack, in his attempt to throw me onto the tracks, said to her, "We've got a real wussies here. What are you going to do about it?" She said, "Jack, that's the new chief creative officer. He's your new boss." As he backpedaled into a flurry of "just kidding," a little hazing, he literally had tears running down his cheeks. To break the uncomfortable silence, I said, "Jack, check back with me in an hour. I'll have something then. We can review it together." The room was silent. Buttholes like him deserve it so much, but I can't help being so embarrassed on their behalf. A coworker who was convinced that I was talking smack about him behind his back decided to start secretly recording my conversations with other workers at my desk. He bragged about how he had something that was going to get me fired to one of my friends. He found out that this is a felony in my state and HR doesn't put up with that kind of behavior. At the last minute he claimed that it was just a joke and we couldn't prove it, but him being scared shitless for that split second was all the backfiring I needed. He backed off a lot after that. Oh, Tom, you're such a douchebag. Was in high school band and had a particular douche who had a brow like a caveman. Seriously, they almost stuck over his chin, and the aggressiveness of one. He was making jokes with his buds, and some of them were directed at me. I ignored him. I was reading my book, and I was going to enjoy the dang thing. Well, my Cro-Magnon schoolmate did not enjoy that, so he started staring at me from across the band room. Sensing his disapproval of me ignoring his glorious jokes, I looked up and met his gaze. I winked. He did not like that one bit, so he picked up his mouthpiece. Trumpet mouthpieces are small, but they are bloody well fast, and hurled it at me. I ducked behind my music stand and felt it was over me. Luckily, or not depending on your viewpoint, my band director was right behind me and got nailed in the back by it. In 2 seconds he went from being the cool and relaxed band director to the red-faced fury of Apollo himself. Classmate was suspended, eventually quit, and never so much as looked at me again. Good year. TL. DR. Neanderthals are dumb. I have dreamed of this day. I am a trainee that was being hosted by Herpaderp Power, technically employed by a GTO. One day my, very recently promoted, boss starts drilling me on not following his instructions to the letter for the 5th time. Each time I had fixed the problem instead of following his policy of simply replacing the computer. None of the computers had broken after my repairs. I say stuff like I'm out of here if I stay, then I'm probably going to kill this man. This new boss then proceeds to modify all of my job tickets from my 1.5 years of work to prove his point. The ticket service fails and corrupts the database. They recover the database from before he edited them. His boss notices the disparity and gives me his apologies for various actions that they took, aka firing me, locking me out of sight, etc. The new boss gets a disciplinary hearing. Meanwhile, the company that was technically employing me has put me on full time. In this company there's only 2 IT people including myself, and the other one is pretty awesome. All the people are friendly and I'm feeling more fulfilled in my work. TL. DR. Got fired from a crappy job because of my crappy boss falsifying records. The boss got caught and my labor hire company, not my original employer, employed me in their office instead. That seems like that boss could actually face serious monetary penalties were you to sue for fraud. He falsified documents claiming they were made by you for the purpose of defamation. These 2 kids were picking on me in the 5th grade. They tried to do that whole, one kneels behind you while the other pushes you over. I cracked 2 of the kids' ribs. Boy, that escalated quickly. In pay, when we ran track the boys would run one way and the girls would run the other way, but we never crossed paths. Everyone went halfway on the track, then turned back and ran the other half, so there was no meeting of the boys and girls. Well, at the half, some popular girl thought it'd be hilarious to pants me, so she says, "Hey, come see." Some girl told me to tell you something. 7th grade me was naive, so I didn't see what could go wrong. Besides the teacher seeing I was talking to a girl or something. So I go up to her, and out of nowhere, she tries to pants me for some reason, but fails and I just end up falling, which not many people saw. She settled with that and started laughing. Her friend saw what happened and decided to stand up for me, so she went up and pantsed the mean girl to get back at her. She accidentally pulled down everything, panties and all, and a lot more people saw. I thought it was some hilarious karma. TL. DR. B wanted to see my dong, got her pants pulled down. Dude, no, you got it all wrong. The mean girl liked you. She set it all up. She was supposed to pants you and her friend was supposed to pants her so you would both be there pantsless and would have sex. It obviously backfired. A friend of mine was dared to pants me at school, so he ran down the hall, leaned over while running to try and pants me, and wound up leaning over too much, stumbled, and face planted into the floor. He got a bloody nose and no one saw my boxers. Pretty much a win in my book. Girl I was part-time seeing told some mutual friend that I was clingy and wouldn't stop calling her and that I paraded her around like a trophy. A mutual friend simply replied, "Really? Because we talk all the time and he didn't even mention he was freaking you?" I worked in the punks show business for a few years, and if you were to line me up against punk rockers I look very clean cut, but I've been around the block a few times. So one night I was working a show, and it was going to be a bit awkward, considering the two big names for the night were notorious for having large skinhead followings. I had worked with both bands before and hung out with them on a couple occasions while they were in town. They weren't racist, but they still had a racist following. Fast forward to a couple hours before the show, I arrived to help load in gear and set up the system for sound check. As I was walking towards the entrance a group of punklings come up to me and ask what are your colors, same gang style bulls you see, only more humorous when it's someone with purplish hair. I ignore them, go inside and let the owner know I'm there. I come back downstairs. This group of 2 punks is now 5. And they say I need to be taxed for my jacket because I disrespected them. At this point, 8 large guys with shaved heads come out of a couple vans and walk up to me and ask me if I have a problem with the kids trying to intimidate me into giving them my jacket. I said no. They were just leaving. These guys were from the main bands playing that night. One band called The Business, the other being Agnostic Front. The look of terror on these kids' faces was priceless. Before we started loading the gear, one of the kids came up to me and apologized. TLDR, punk rockers try to steal my jacket. 2 groups they idolized turn out to be friends of mine and were about to start a fight with them for harassing me. Okay, I have a different login at work. My boss has been a bit of a control freak since we hired him a couple years ago. Largely, we all put up with him, though the people he supervises can all do the job better than he. Not that unusual, even in a technical field like mine. Anyway, he got frustrated one evening when he saw me helping another co-worker with their stuff, and let me know that we would have to have a meeting in the morning with his boss to redefine my workload. See, if he didn't tell me to help employee X, that he dislikes, with their work, I shouldn't be helping with their work. I guess I have more team spirit than my boss. Next morning, at the appointed time, I stick my head in the door of boss office and say, "Do we have a meeting?" with a knowing grin. Boss says, "Is boss here yet?" and I say, "Yeah, I just saw him. I'll go get him." So boss airs a couple petty grievances, and then says, "There have been some times when I am setting something up and you know it and you leave early. If you know I'm working on setting up processes in the afternoon, can you stick around to help?" And I knew I was gold. Processes is something my boss should have learned how to do over 2 years ago. So I raise my eyebrows and carefully say with as little scorn and derision as humanly possible, "If I were to stick around and help out, do you think you could learn processes so I don't have to stay late next time?" And my boss replies with, "Yes, of course. Just so you know, the only reason I don't know processes is because at all my previous companies we used process ABC, and I knew I had him." 5 minutes later, I walked out of boss office grinning, because my boss just embarrassed himself in front of his boss, and didn't even know it. I knew that right then. Boss was saying to boss, "You don't know this? That's something you should know." And voila, a couple months later, my boss is learning new tricks, including this. I know that this is the guy filling out my evals, and the 3 of us know I'll let him hang, and I just cannot bring myself to care. The whole company knows his history and we have made a habit of working around him, so frick it. Hopefully this doesn't get buried, but here goes. My best guy friend had moved out of his fiancée's and his house after a 7-year relationship. He's kind of a sucker, but a good person. He rented a small house down the street from his mom, and since the fiancée owed him a crap ton of money, she gave him a washer and dryer, a table, etc. He was trying to keep the relationship alive as well as get some much needed space. He really didn't want to break up with her. One day, she decides that he's cheating on her. He wasn't. He was at my house drinking and playing poker with my brother and a few other guy friends. She flips the frick out on him when he gets home. She has a house key and is lurking in the house, refusing to come out when he gets there. Says she's waiting on a guy friend of hers to bring a trailer and a dolly so she can take her crap out of his house. My pal calls the cops. A bunch of bulls goes on there, but she leaves before they can get there. She then tries to file personal protection orders on he and his mother. She lied about the both of them threatening her life in order to do so. My pal decided to contest the PPO and take her to court. In Michigan, you can have someone who isn't a lawyer speak for you in court. He asked me. I couldn't object to any of the other attorney's arguments. He made some outrageous accusations, even asking me if my pal had ever tried to sleep with me, and when I told him no, on the stand, he then asked me if my pal was gay, but I could question every witness, including the fiancée. She went up to the witness stand last. As soon as she got up there, she went into a crazy crying fit. I mean, sobbing, blowing snot bubbles, the whole 9 yards. My question was this: fiancée, what did you bring into my pal's house with you? She replied, an iron billy club my cop friend gave me. I asked her if it was in plain sight, and she stupidly replied, no, I had it up the sleeve of my sweatshirt. The judge called a halt to the proceedings and dismissed all of the PPO attempts. He then assigned her 50 hours of anger management classes, and when she shrieked, he threw her in jail for contempt of court. As she was being led away, she said to me, B, I'm gonna get you. I asked for a PPO on her right then and there and it was granted on the spot. Insert success kid here. TL. DR. Crazy woman puts her own foot in her mouth in court, reversing the original charges she sought out onto her. My first long-term boyfriend cheated on me during our senior year of high school, then led me on for months by saying, I wanna be with you. I just need some time apart. We're still together. I just wanna see other people too. Like any socially inept, shy, insecure high schooler, I went along with it for quite some time before calling it quits for good. However, my ex had promised me long before that he would take me to the senior prom that year, no matter what happened between us. In the weeks leading up to prom, I order a modest looking dress online, buy my ticket, book a hair appointment, the whole shebang. So, 1 week before that prom night, I find out from mutual friends that he's taking the 14-year-old who he cheated on me with to the prom instead of me, and I'd also been told that my ex wasn't going to tell me about it. He'd been planning on letting me buy a dress, spend the entire prom day getting ready, and then he was going to stand me up on prom night. So I asked his recently single best friend to take me, because we'd already been friends for years before, and he'd just broken up with his girlfriend. I return the modest dress I'd bought online, and take the money to a local dress shop. I buy a sexy, flaming red prom dress that shows off my legs, back, and bust, sky-high black stilettos. I forego the intricate hairstyle for a sexy haircut instead. I looked good. I showed up for the pre-prom dinner at a restaurant, where my date, his friend and his girlfriend, and my ex and his new girlfriend are waiting at the table. I walk down the path leading to the table like it's a catwalk. Every eye in the restaurant is on me. For 30 seconds, I commanded an entire room. I danced the night away with my prom date while my ex fumed to himself in the corner, refusing to dance with his girl. He left early. My date and I go back to my house where we have the longest, most intimate conversation of my life. We talk about our lives, our childhoods, who we both are and who we both want to be, everything. We talk until the sun comes up. My ex's best friend and I are now happily married. So really, every day that I live is a day that my ex's plan to humiliate me is backfiring. I'm giving you a thumb up for commanding an entire room. Congratulations on that. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.